3 weeks after we buried my wife, my stepdaughter sent me a text that changed everything. Not a phone call, a text. 11 words that told me exactly where I stood. My name is Gary Harmon. I'm 58 years old. I own 2 auto repair shops in Nashville, Tennessee. I built both of them from scratch. Started with a single bay garage and a used diagnostic machine I bought on installment back when I was 28. 30 years of early mornings, grease under my fingernails, and more slow Januaries than I care to count. That's the short version. The longer version is what I'm about to tell you. Carol passed in October, cancer. We had 15 years together, and I would take every single one of them again without hesitation. She was a bookkeeper, careful with numbers, always knew where every dollar was. She had a daughter from her first marriage, Diane. When Carol and I started dating, Diane was 14 years old, quiet, a little guarded, the kind of kid who watched you before she decided whether to trust you. I didn't push it. I just showed up consistently, drove her to school when Carol had early shifts, helped with math homework at the kitchen table, sat in the bleachers at her track meets even when Carol couldn't make it. Somewhere around year 2, Diane started leaving me notes on the fridge, little things. Thanks for the ride. Dinner was good. Then one afternoon when she was about 16, she introduced me to a friend as my dad. She didn't make a big deal of it. She just said it like it was already true. That was probably the best moment of my life, and I don't say that lightly. I want you to understand that. I chose to love that kid. Nobody required it. No court order, no obligation. I chose it, and I believed for a long time that she chose it back. When Diane was 24, she married Brad Coulter. Brad was smooth in the way that some men are smooth, confident without much underneath it. Always had a plan he was about to execute. He called himself a financial planner, had business cards and a decent suit and a firm handshake. I didn't distrust him immediately. That came later, piece by piece. Over the next 6 years, I helped them out more times than I can list easily. $28,000 toward their down payment when they bought the house on Fernwood Drive. $15,000 when Brad had what he called a slow quarter and they were behind on the mortgage. $22,000 toward a business venture of his that never seemed to produce anything visible. A used Jeep for Diane when her car died, $14,000. Then smaller amounts, $6,000 here, $8,000 there, emergency this, opportunity that. I kept records because I run a business and that's what you do. But I never sat down and added it up. I think part of me didn't want to. By the time Carol got sick, the total was somewhere around $310,000 across 6 years. Carol's last months were hard on everybody, including Diane and Brad. I told myself that. They visited maybe 5 times over 4 months. Brad came twice, stayed an hour each time, spent most of it on his phone. After Carol passed, I gave them space. People grieve differently, I know that. 3 weeks after the funeral, I was sitting in my kitchen at 7 in the morning with a cup of coffee going cold in front of me. The house was too quiet. It had been too quiet for weeks. My phone buzzed on the table. It was Diane. Dad, I've been thinking about this and I need to be honest. We have our own lives now. You can't expect us to look after you when you get older. That's what nursing homes are for. Carol was the connection between us. It's time we all moved forward separately. I read it 3 times. Then I set the phone face down on the table and looked out the window at the backyard Carol had planted with hydrangeas the second summer we lived there. They were brown and bare in November. I sat there for a long time. I'm not going to tell you it didn't hurt. It did. 15 years of showing up, $310,000 handed over without a single repayment. And this is the message I get 3 weeks after her mother's funeral. While I'm still sleeping on my side of the bed because I haven't been able to make myself move to the middle yet, but here's what also happened in that moment. Something settled in my chest, cold and clear, like when the fog burns off the road in the morning. I stopped feeling the hurt and started seeing the picture. All those years, all those checks, all those times I told myself the relationship was real and the money was just helping family. I saw it plainly for what it was. I didn't text back. Instead, I got up, washed my coffee cup, and drove to the shop. Earl was already there. Had the lights on in Bay 1 and coffee going in the break room. Earl Tatum had been my lead mechanic for 16 years. He didn't ask how I was doing. He just handed me a cup and went back to work. That's the kind of people you find out matter when everything else falls away. I worked through the morning. Then at noon, I went to my office, closed the door, and called Philip Dunmore. Philip Dunmore was an estate attorney I had met at a Chamber of Commerce dinner about 4 years back. We had talked briefly about succession planning for the shops, but I had never followed through. He picked up on the second ring. I told him I needed to sit down with him. Soon? How soon? He asked. Tomorrow morning if you have it. He did. We met at his office on Charlotte Avenue at 9 a.m. I brought my folder, every transfer record, every check copy, every text message where Diane had said, "We'll pay you back, Dad. Just give us a little more time." I had kept everything in a manila folder in my filing cabinet at the shop. Not because I planned to use it, just because I keep records. Always have. Philip read through it quietly. He didn't react much. Estate attorneys see a lot of family situations and they learn to keep their face neutral. When he finished, he set the folder down and looked at me. Gary, before we talk about the will, I want to ask you something. Do you know what Brad actually does with money? Not what he says he does, what he actually does. I told him what I knew, which wasn't much beyond the surface. Brad talked constantly about deals and clients and opportunities. The results were harder to see. Philip suggested I speak with someone who could look deeper into the financial picture. He gave me a name, Lorraine Vance. Former auditor, now private financial investigator. He said if there was a trail to follow, she would find it. I called Lorraine that same afternoon. Her office was downtown, third floor of an older building on 4th Avenue, the kind of space that told you she spent her budget on information and not furniture. She was direct mid-40s, the kind of tired competence that comes from years of watching people lie about money. She quoted me $3,200 a month. I told her accuracy mattered more than speed. She said that was the right answer, and we would get along fine. 2.5 weeks later, she called me back and asked if I could come in. I sat across from her desk while she walked me through what she had found. Brad had forged my signature, not once, twice. 2 separate loan applications, one for $95,000 filed 18 months ago and one for $85,000 filed 8 months ago. Both applications listed one of my shop properties on Dickerson Pike as collateral. The notary stamps on both were from a notary I had never heard of and could not locate in the state registry. The signatures were not close to mine, but the loan officers had apparently processed them anyway. $180,000 in loans backed by my property, without my knowledge or consent. I sat with that for a moment. Both loans were drawn down, I asked. Both fully drawn, Lorraine said. The money moved through 2 accounts. One was closed after the first withdrawal. We are still tracing where it ended up, but initial indicators point to investment accounts that have since gone to near zero. I thanked her and drove back to the shop. I did not call anyone that evening. I just worked late, went over the week's invoices, and let the information settle. There is a version of this where I call Diane immediately and confront her. That version ends badly for me. I knew that clearly. The next morning, I called Philip and told him what Lorraine had found. He was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said jury on loan documents is a federal offense if it crosses state lines, which this does given where the lending institution is chartered. You have a criminal referral you can make to the DA's office. You also have a civil suit for the $180,000 plus damages. But Gary, if we move too fast, Brad moves the money, closes the accounts, and you spend 3 years chasing a judgment you can never collect. So we set the ground first, I said. Exactly. We secure the assets, document the competency, build the trust structure. Then we let the legal process follow. That week I went to Vanderbilt Medical Center and requested a full evaluation. Cognitive testing, neurological exam, blood work, the works. I had read enough about contested estates to know that diminished capacity is the first argument anyone uses when they don't like what a will says. I wanted 3 doctors on record before I changed anything. All 3 cleared me. One of them said my scores were above average for my age group. I asked for everything signed, notarized, and dated. While the medical paperwork was being prepared, Philip and I drafted the Harmon Auto Skills Foundation Trust. 85% of both shop properties and all business assets transferred into the trust. I remained the sole managing trustee with full operational control and all income rights for the rest of my life. After I was gone, the trust would fund 12 scholarships per year for Tennessee students pursuing automotive and trade certifications. Diane's inheritance from my personal estate would be $50,000, enough that she could not argue complete disinheritance. Not enough to be worth a serious legal fight. It took Philip 11 days to finalize the documents. I signed everything on a Tuesday afternoon with 2 witnesses and a notary present. My hand was steady. Then I called Brad. I told him I had been thinking about opening a 3rd location, a bigger shop with a full alignment bay and updated diagnostics equipment. I said I could use someone with financial experience to help structure the deal. Would he be interested in sitting down? He said yes before I finished the sentence. That was the answer I expected. It told me everything I needed to know about where his head was and what he thought was about to happen. He thought the old man was coming back around. He thought the door was opening again. It was just not the way he imagined. We met at a coffee shop on Gallatin Avenue on a Thursday morning. I got there early, ordered a black coffee, and picked a table in the corner with a clear view of the door. Tennessee is a one-party consent state, which means I can legally record any conversation I'm part of. My phone was in my shirt pocket, recording app already running, screen dark. Brad walked in 4 minutes late, which was on time for him. He ordered something with 3 words in the name, sat down across from me, and smiled the way he always smiled, like he already knew how the conversation was going to go. I told him I was serious about the 3rd location, showed him a printout of a commercial property listing on Murfreesboro Pike, real listing, nothing made up. I said I wanted to expand before I got too old to manage the growth myself, and that I needed someone with financial experience to help structure the acquisition and set up the operating accounts correctly. Brad leaned forward. That was when I knew I had him. He spent the next 40 minutes telling me things he should not have known. He described the current estimated value of both shops in numbers that were accurate to within 5%. He explained how a 3rd location could be structured as a separate LLC with shared equipment access, which would allow certain assets to be leveraged independently. He talked about the Dickerson Pike property specifically, mentioned its square footage and the year the building was last assessed without me bringing it up at all. At one point he said, if we set this up right, the equity you have sitting in the existing properties can do a lot of work for us. For us, that word again. I nodded and asked a few follow-up questions, kept my voice easy, interested, the way a man sounds when he thinks a deal is coming together. Brad kept talking. He outlined a plan where he would be added as a co-signer on a new business line of credit, with access to a joint operating account during the acquisition phase. He said it would streamline the process. He said it made good financial sense. What it actually was him describing exactly the kind of access he had already taken without permission, now trying to get it through the front door since the back door had worked before. I thanked him for his time at the end, said I needed a few days to think it over. We shook hands in the parking lot and he drove away looking satisfied. I sat in my truck for a few minutes, then sent the recording file to Philip. Philip called me that evening. He said the recording was clear and that Brad had, in his own words, demonstrated detailed knowledge of assets he should not have had access to and proposed an arrangement that mirrored the fraudulent loan applications almost exactly. He said we now had the forgery documentation, the financial investigation report, and a recorded conversation that established pattern and intent. He said it was time to move. The following week, Lorraine brought me one more piece. She had been tracking Brad's social contacts and found that he had approached Earl twice in the past month. Earl had not mentioned it to me, not to protect Brad, but because he did not think much of it at the time. Brad had stopped by the Dickerson Pike shop on a Tuesday afternoon, said he was just checking in, asked Earl some casual questions about how busy things were, whether Gary had been around much, whether there had been any changes in how the shop was running. Earl had answered politely and thought nothing of it until Lorraine called him. When I talked to Earl about it, he sat across from me in the shop office and looked straight at me. I didn't know he was fishing, Earl said. If I had, I would have told you the same day. I believed him without question. 16 years of showing up every morning tells you everything you need to know about a person. What Brad had been doing was checking whether anyone at the shop might contradict a story about my mental state, whether employees had noticed anything that could be used to support a competency challenge down the road. He was building a case before he even knew he needed one. That told me he had been planning this for longer than I had given him credit for. I was not surprised. I was just more certain. Philip filed the civil suit for $180,000 on a Friday. The forgery documentation went to the Nashville DA's office the same afternoon. Lorraine prepared a summary report that laid out the full financial picture, every transfer from me to Diane and Brad across 6 years, every loan application with the forged signatures, and the recorded conversation. Philip sent copies of my 3 medical evaluations along with it, all dated, all notarized, all showing full cognitive competency. Then Philip sent a formal letter to Diane and Brad, requesting their presence at his office the following Wednesday at 2 p.m. for what he described as a family estate matter, requiring both of them in person. Diane called me that Sunday evening. She sounded uncertain, a little cautious. She asked if everything was okay. I told her everything was fine and I was looking forward to seeing her Wednesday. She said okay. She said Brad had something that afternoon, but she would make sure he moved it. I told her it was important that he be there. She said she would make sure. I set the phone down and looked around the living room. Carol's reading chair was still in the corner by the window where she had always kept it. I had not moved anything in that room since October. Some things you're not ready to change until you are, and there's no point in rushing it. I thought about what she would say if she knew what had been happening. Carol was a careful woman, methodical. She would have caught it years earlier than I did. But she also would have understood why I missed it. When you want something to be true, you can look right at the evidence and not register what it means. Wednesday was 3 days away. They arrived at Philip's office at 2 p.m. Exactly, I was already seated when they walked in. Diane was dressed carefully, the way she dressed when she wanted to make a good impression. Brad wore a jacket and carried himself the way he always did. like a man walking into a room where he expected to come out ahead. Philip greeted them, offered coffee, made small talk for about 90 seconds. Then he opened the folder on the table and got to work. He started with the money. Every transfer listed by date and amount. The $28,000 down payment, the $15,000 for the slow quarter, the $22,000 business investment that produced nothing, the Jeep, the smaller amounts that added up faster than they should have. The full 6-year total sitting at the bottom of the last page, $310,000. Diane looked at the number for a long moment. Brad did not look at it at all. Then Philip read the text message aloud. The one Diane sent 3 weeks after her mother's funeral. He read it slowly and set it on the table in front of her. Then he put the forgery documentation down. Both loan applications side by side, the forged signatures, the notary stamps that did not match any registered notary in Tennessee, the property on Dickerson Pike listed as collateral without my knowledge, $95,000 and $85,000 both fully drawn. Brad's jaw tightened. He started to say something and Philip held up one hand, not aggressively, just firmly, and kept going. He played 30 seconds of the coffee shop recording, just the part where Brad described the equity in my existing properties and outlined the co-signer arrangement he wanted, his own voice and his own words in a public place on a Thursday morning 2 weeks prior. The room was quiet after that. Philip informed them that the forgery documentation had been submitted to the Nashville DA's office, that a civil suit for $180,000 had been filed, that the IRS had been provided records of unreported gift income totaling over $200,000 across 4 years, which generated a separate liability issue they would need to address with their own accountant. Brad stood up, his chair scraped back hard against the floor. He pointed at me and said I had set him up, that the recording was illegal, that I had no right to involve the government in a family financial matter. Philip told him calmly that Tennessee one-party consent law made the recording fully admissible, that the IRS inquiry was a factual response to a lawful request for documentation, that the civil filing was a matter of public record as of that morning. I sat across the table the entire time and said almost nothing. At one point, Brad looked directly at me and said, "You planned all of this." I documented everything I said. I always do. Diane had not spoken once. She was looking at the table in front of her, at the text message Philip had read aloud, at the number at the bottom of the transfer summary. When Brad grabbed his jacket and moved toward the door, she did not follow immediately. She sat there for another few seconds. Then she got up and left without looking at me. Brad did not go quietly after that. He hired an attorney and attempted a competency challenge, claiming I had been manipulated into changing my estate plan by outside parties. Philip responded with the 3 medical evaluations, all dated before any legal changes were made, all showing above average cognitive function for my age. The challenge was dismissed in 6 weeks. The judge's written opinion noted that the evidence presented suggested the petition was motivated by financial interest rather than genuine concern. The criminal case moved on its own timeline. Brad's forgery charges went to federal court 8 months later. He could not produce a single document showing the loan applications were authorized. The coffee shop recording did not help his defense. He received 16 months and was ordered to pay full restitution. Their house on Fernwood Drive was sold to satisfy the civil judgment and the IRS settlement. Diane moved into an apartment in Murfreesboro and took a full-time position at an insurance company. She filed for divorce 4 months after the sentencing. The Harmon Auto Skills Foundation launched the following spring. We held the announcement at a technical college on Whites Creek Pike, about 80 people in a room that smelled like chalk and machine oil. 12 scholarship recipients, all Tennessee residents, all pursuing automotive or trade certifications. I read each name aloud myself. One of them, Stuart Fontenot, 19 years old from Clarksville, had been working nights at a gas station to save tuition. When I called his name, he put his face in his hands for a moment. Then he looked up and nodded once, slowly, like he was making a promise to himself. That is the picture I keep on the desk in my office at the Dickerson Pike shop. Diane reached out 8 months after the foundation launch. She came to the shop alone, no warning, just pulled into the lot and walked in. We sat in my office for about half an hour. She said she had known something was wrong with Brad for years and had told herself it was not her problem to fix. She said she let him use their relationship with me as a resource, and she did not stop him. She said she was sorry. I told her I heard her. I told her I was glad she was out of it. I did not tell her everything was fine, because it was not yet, but I did not close the door either. Some doors you leave open a crack and see what grows. Carol used to say the best thing you can do with money is put it somewhere it keeps moving. I think she meant people, not accounts. I think she would have approved of where it ended up. That text message Diane sent 3 weeks after the funeral was meant to tell me I did not matter anymore. What it actually did was show me clearly where I stood, and once I could see that clearly, I knew exactly what to do. I spent $310,000 trying to hold onto something that was already gone. The day I stopped, I built something that will still be running long after I'm not. If any part of this story sounds familiar, you already know what the next step is. Document everything. Call the right people. Do not wait for the situation to get better on its own, because it will not. The men who come out the other side of something like this are not the ones who got angry. They are the ones who got organized. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment below. Subscribe to the Cold Revenge channel. Click the next video and stay with us.